first and foremost, you can't ask for money and resources if you're coming from a place of total insecurity.
Welcome to the HR Like a Boss video series. If it resonates with you, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing with a friend. You'll find a social media link and how to listen to the complete podcast interview. In addition, you can take the HR Like a Boss survey at willery.com/HRLAB. I've embarked on a journey to get to know amazingly awesome HR and business professionals. These conversations create the foundation for my book on what it takes to do HR like a boss. On today's episode, I am joined by Laura Mazzullo. Laura is the owner of Eastside Staffing, and for those Midwesterners, she currently works in New York, but she's a Wisconsin Badger alum, so we'll have to get a little bit of that Midwestern feel to her. And I wanted to welcome Laura to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, and go Badgers for any Wisconsinites on the call today.
Yes, fantastic. Good for you. It's I know we were talking about that earlier in the beginning. So for those that don't know you, maybe you could tell a little bit about your journey through your career and what you're currently working on.
Yeah, I've been recruiting for 17 years, but specifically for the HR community since 2007. And I started my own business in 2013 called Eastside Staffing. So it's a boutique search firm focused solely on HR recruiting. And in the pandemic, obviously, I was trying to be creative and innovative, thinking about what, HR leaders really needed from me. And so I've been doing more coaching and consulting as well. I'm finding that in situations where companies don't necessarily need a headhunter just to fill a job, they're also needing some support in upskilling their talent acquisition teams. Same with HR job seekers. So there's been kind of a fun additional service that I've been doing the last year and a half now, just around kind of helping to develop some more skills instead of just filling the jobs for them.
Good for you. Way to be adaptable. And certainly I can imagine, I know for us in our business with the pandemic, there was a unique challenge around clients having funds to hire through a search firm at the same time that there was a pause, right? Like, what are we doing? What's happening? But HR was so impacted by the pandemic and continues to be. So way to be adaptable. I think that's one of the keys to success in entrepreneurship for anyone listening out there. What you originally had set forth in your mind may not necessarily be what you're doing 1, 2, 5, 10 years later. So
that's a great point. Yep. And really listening to what your clients need, what your partners are really, what their pain points are. And they're always evolving.
Also wanted to kind of start off the show with my very first kind of standard question in season 1 is asking my guest, how would they describe the purpose of human resources? What would your answer be to that, Laura?
Yeah, I think HR is it's composed of the people who solve business challenges through people and culture. So I believe everybody in a business is solving a business challenge, right? The CFO is solving a financial challenge, or it's solving a challenge through finance, right? A general counsel is solving a problem through law. I think an HR person is solving a problem through people and culture. So they're looking at everything through that lens, but ideally they're coming up with innovative and creative ways to solve those challenges.
So what challenges do you think HR faces around advancing people and supporting a culture when it comes to achieving that purpose, right? So what do you think they run into that gets in their way?
Yeah, I think the one thing we don't talk enough about is actually money. I think that there are not enough resources in HR or invested in HR. So a lot of leaders are having HR teams run so lean, especially right now. And I'm just hearing from so many HR and talent pros that are facing burnout because their teams are understaffed. They don't have training resources. They don't have even the technology they need to be successful. And it's sort of a bummer to me that I think there's an issue of HR still being seen as a cost center, not necessarily a place to invest money.
Are there suggestions you might have on ways for companies that are under-resourced to be able to align back to that people and culture purpose, as opposed to going to the CFO and saying, I need an extra $1 million to really advance this company to where we need it to go?
Yeah, I love this question. And I think it's so complex, John, because I think that like the barrier that HR pros face with this discussion starts often from within. It's like a self-worth issue. which I know is another icky thing to talk about, but we have to talk about it. They don't always feel worthy of the money. They don't always feel worthy of that resource or support. So I hear a lot of, well, I'm not as important as the general counsel, or my role isn't really as difficult as the CFO. And I know people listening to this might be rolling their eyes saying, I can't believe she hears that. There's no way she hears that. But I do. I hear it all the time. And I think it's subtle. Sometimes I think it's subconscious because for years they've heard it from the outside that they don't have the same level of worth or value in an organization. But as a child who'd be bullied, let's say, sometimes you internalize what you hear. And I worry there's kind of an issue with just their own confidence. So I've been working with a lot of HR pros recently on that. First and foremost, you can't ask for money and resources if you're coming from a place of total insecurity, right? So it's a big one to overcome.
It's interesting you share that, because one of the key components in the book is the characteristics to do HR like a boss. And I'm up to almost 20, right? I'm trying to come up with 20, and it's no joke. Like, it's one of those things where it takes a special person to do this well, and to attract your best talent into HR so that can sprinkle itself throughout the rest of the organization.
Yeah,
I think is a really, it's a miss, because a CFO, a CEO, that's maybe really heavily money or profit driven won't put as much of a value on culture. I do see it shifting. Brene Brown's helping, Simon Sinek's helping. Like, there's a real push from a cultural feel. And I can tell you, having worked within a few companies in my personal life and professionally, and then also working with thousands of clients, like, when you have a good culture, it permeates everywhere. When you have a bad culture, it permeates everywhere. On the opposite end. So I think there's, to me, if you don't know the number, if you can't quantify it yourself, you got to find a way to do it. Even if you're somewhat sort of making it up, and I don't want to make it up like it's not like real, then no one will believe you. But here's the data, here's the science, here's the impact of good culture. I mean, good culture, they've proven that companies that have good culture perform better on Wall Street, right? It's a proven fact. So
sometimes the data you can show too is the downside of leaving a role open. So you and I are probably both seeing this. Like, some people have their HR leadership roles open 3 or 4 months. They've met 15 candidates. They've rejected 30 people in the process. Like, it's a drawn out journey. That's an easy point as a talent acquisition expert to express to them the downside of that, like what the harm that's doing. Sometimes that's, I don't want to say through the negative lens, but through the lens of, like, if we continue down this path, this is like how we're continuing to harm our employer brand and harm our candidate experience. Sometimes that gets the wheels thinking differently too.
Well, I really appreciate you being on the show. I'm going to get you out of here on this. The book is HR Like a Boss. The podcast is HR Like a Boss. So how would you describe someone that does HR Like a Boss?
They are active listeners. They challenge their limiting beliefs. They overcome assumptions and insecurities. They set boundaries. They stand in their self-worth. They can disagree comfortably with leaders, and they can be the expert without shame or guilt or feeling any less worthy than anybody else on that executive team.
I see a theme here, Laura. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I really do appreciate you being on the show today. You mentioned a few things that I'll just highlight for those that are listening. So people are solving business challenges, and HR's responsibility is to make sure you have the right people solving the right challenges. An opportunity, we talked about this quite a bit, is examining your self-worth and making sure to really dive into that emotion and uncover why you're feeling the way that you feel. The seat at the table for HR is there for you to take, and the hiring and development within an organization is a skill. So your HR professionals, your recruiters have to be savvy at that in order to make the right impact. And the last thing you said that I wrote down that made impact on me was challenging your limiting beliefs, right? Make sure that, again, back to your self-worth, that you have your own personal confidence. So really appreciate you being on the show. I really enjoyed getting to know you better.
Me too. Thanks, everyone. I'm sure we'll continue these conversations over the year.
You got it. Well, thanks for checking out today's episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share with a friend. And until next time, let's continue to aspire to do amazingly awesome HR.